And is there a risk that Andrew, if pushed too far, could do a Harry and destroy the royal family?
Wasn't there some speculation that she was on Epstein's yacht at one point in time? There was like photos with her and Prince Andrew way back in the day.
This is what Harry has to put up with? So embarrassing. Could this be more cringe?
The walls of Montecito just shook, and this time it wasn't some Netflix camera crew or another PR stunt gone sideways. Meghan Markle's reportedly in full meltdown mode, and here's the twist you didn't see coming. Sarah Ferguson, yes, Fergie herself, just dropped some long-buried secrets about Meghan's yacht days that have Hollywood and royal circles absolutely losing it. What Fergie revealed during what was supposed to be a chill book interview has set off a royal scandal so wild that even the people closest to the situation can't believe she actually said it out loud. Grab your tea, because this isn't your typical gossip. This is the kind of story that makes careers tremble and sends the internet into absolute chaos. But here's the thing. What Fergie said next is even more shocking. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this is about to get wild. Drop a like if you're ready for the tea. Let's dive in. It all started so innocently. Fergie was doing the rounds promoting her latest book, one of those soft focus interviews about healing, forgiveness, and moving forward after scandal. The whole vibe was mellow, nostalgic even. She's sitting there talking about her journey, her mistakes, all that redemption arc stuff we've heard before. Everything's going smoothly until the interviewer mentions Meghan Markle's modern influence on the royal family. And that's when the temperature in the room changed. People who saw it say Fergie's expression shifted. Not angry, not defensive, just this knowing look. She paused, and that signature Fergie smile crept across her face. "Oh, Meghan," she said, almost savoring the name. Well, let's just say she's not the first young woman who's been fascinated by royal life or the perks that come with it. The interviewer laughed, probably thinking Fergie was just being cheeky. But Fergie didn't laugh back. She kept that smile going and continued, "I remember years ago there were whispers about a certain yacht summer. You know, those glamorous trips where everyone's playing dress up, chasing attention, and hoping someone important is watching." Now here's where it gets absolutely wild. Fergie leaned in and dropped this line. Some of those faces ended up in very unexpected places, even the royal world. Cue the collective gasp. The interviewer's eyes went wide. Within minutes, the internet absolutely exploded, because anyone following Meghan's story knew exactly what yacht summer Fergie was talking about. Those early 2000s Mediterranean parties, the glamorous gatherings off the coasts of Greece and Monaco, where models and Hollywood hopefuls mingled with wealthy power players and some very well-connected people. Social media went into overdrive. Twitter threads started popping up. Old photos that had been buried in random blog archives suddenly resurfaced. The hashtag Fergie Said It started trending within an hour, and royal watchers everywhere were losing their minds. But here's what made it even more explosive. Fergie wasn't backing down. When the interview wrapped, sources say she just smiled.
And I felt very, very honoured and grateful for Harry and Meghan to invite me. That is a big point.
It was a huge...
Thanked everyone and walked out like she just had the most normal conversation in the world. No panic, no regret, just Fergie being Fergie. Meanwhile, over in Montecito, Meghan's phone was probably on fire. Because what Fergie just did was point a full spotlight at the one chapter of Meghan's life she spent years trying to keep buried. The Duchess, who escaped all the royal drama, was about to find out that sometimes the drama follows you. So let's talk about what everyone's been whispering about for years. Those yacht parties weren't just casual beach hangouts. We're talking about seriously exclusive gatherings in the early 2000s, where invitation lists were tighter than Fort Knox and the guest list read like a who's who of wealth, power, and influence. Picture this. Luxury yachts anchored off Greece and Monaco, champagne flowing, designer everything, and a carefully curated mix of people who all wanted something from each other. Here's how it worked. Models, aspiring actresses, and Hollywood hopefuls would get invited, and it wasn't just about having a good time. It was networking on steroids. Young women trying to break into entertainment, rubbing shoulders with producers, investors, and wealthy businessmen who could potentially open doors. Everyone was there to see and be seen, to make connections that could change their careers overnight. And according to the internet's collective memory, which never forgets anything, a young actress who was still grinding for her big break was reportedly part of that scene. We're talking about someone who understood the game, who knew that getting ahead in Hollywood wasn't just about talent, it was about who you knew and who saw you in the right places. These weren't scandalous events, but they were strategic. Every conversation, every photo opportunity was calculated. Over the years, photos from these yacht summers would occasionally surface online. Nothing inappropriate, just glamorous shots of parties and gatherings. But people on the internet noticed patterns. The same faces showing up at different events. Connections being made. And then, years later, some of those faces ended up in very different circles.
What I love about that is that I am different and he's different.
Including one who eventually became the Duchess of Sussex. Meghan's team has always dismissed these old stories as gossip, the kind of misogynistic nonsense that gets thrown at any woman who networked her way up in a tough industry. And honestly, there's truth to that. Plenty of actresses attended events, made connections, and built careers without anything shady going on. But what made this chapter sticky for Meghan was timing. When she married into the royal family, those old yacht party photos weren't just Hollywood history. They became potential ammunition. The narrative Fergie just reignited wasn't about anything shocking by Hollywood standards. It was about image. The carefully crafted story of Meghan as a self-made actress who just happened to fall in love with a prince gets complicated when people start talking about the strategic networking and years spent climbing that particular social ladder. It suggests calculation, ambition, hustle, all things that are normal in entertainment, but don't quite fit the fairy tale version everyone was trying to sell. And that's exactly why Fergie's comment landed like a grenade. She didn't have to spell anything out. All she had to do was mention yacht summer and let the internet do the rest. Once those whispers started circulating again, every old blog post, every archived photo, every half-remembered rumor came crawling back into the spotlight. And this time it wasn't coming from tabloids. It was coming from another duchess who knew exactly how damaging a well-timed comment could be. The moment that interview clip started making the rounds, you could practically feel the shockwave ripple to California. Inside the Montecito mansion, things went from peaceful to chaos in record time. Sources close to Meghan say she was pacing those marble floors, phone glued to her hand, firing off messages to everyone in her inner circle. Her tone, clipped, sharp, the kind of controlled fury that comes when someone feels blindsided. After everything I've been through, she reportedly muttered, disbelief twisting into anger. Because in Meghan's mind, this wasn't just some random comment from a washed-up duchess. This was Fergie, someone who should understand what it's like to be torn apart by the press, someone who should know better than to throw stones. But here's what really stung. Meghan couldn't just ignore it. If this had come from a tabloid, her team could have dismissed it and moved on. But this was different. This was coming from inside the royal world, from someone who'd been there and lived it. That gave Fergie's words a weight that random internet speculation could never carry. Within hours, Meghan's PR machine kicked into full gear. Crisis meetings started immediately. Late-night calls with publicists, strategists, media contacts. Her team knew they were dealing with something that could spiral fast. The goal was damage control, and counter-narrative. How do you respond to vague comments without giving it more oxygen?
But don't try and trick me now, because I'm not going to play this game. Delete that bit. John, can you just delete it, please?
How do you deny rumors without confirming they're worth denying? Meghan's camp started reaching out to friendly outlets, planting stories about misogynistic attacks and jealous ex-royals trying to tear down a successful woman. The message was clear. This was all bitterness from someone who couldn't handle Meghan's rise. They painted Fergie as bitter, irrelevant, clinging to whatever relevance she could scrape together. But then came the moment that changed everything. Just 24 hours later, paparazzi caught Fergie outside Claridge's hotel in London. Someone shouted, "Fergie, what did you mean about Meghan and the Yacht summer?" And instead of ducking her head and ignoring it, Fergie stopped. She turned toward the cameras and that sly smile spread across her face again. "Oh, darling," she said, practically purring. "I don't tell tales. I just remind people that every fairy tale starts somewhere." That single line detonated across every platform. Twitter went insane, TikTok exploded, the hashtag Fergie didn't back down started trending. Because what Fergie just did was show that she meant exactly what everyone thought she meant. She wasn't apologizing, she wasn't clarifying, she was doubling down. Back in Montecito, you can imagine the absolute meltdown. Meghan's team had been banking on Fergie backing off, maybe issuing some half-hearted statement about being misunderstood. Instead, Fergie had just poured gasoline on a fire that was already raging. Sources say Meghan was beyond furious. She felt betrayed, exposed, and powerless to stop the narrative from spiraling. Her first instinct was to fight back hard, but her team knew that reacting too strongly would only make things worse. It would turn this into a drawn-out battle that would keep the story alive for months, and what would they even be pushing back against? Vague comments and a smirk outside a hotel. So instead, Meghan pivoted to what she does best, controlling her own story. Word started leaking that she was planning something big, a reclaiming truth moment that would let her tell her side without any filters. Maybe a documentary, maybe a long-form interview, something that would shift the focus back to her narrative. But even as her team scrambled to put together a counter-strategy, the damage was already spreading. Fergie's words had opened a door that Meghan had spent years trying to keep sealed shut. And now everyone was walking through it, digging up old photos, resurfacing old rumors, asking questions that Meghan thought she'd left behind forever. Here's what most people miss. Fergie didn't just randomly decide to destroy Meghan's reputation. This was calculated, deliberate, and years in the making. Because if you dig into the timeline, there's one moment that stands out. Princess Eugenie's wedding. October 2018. Eugenie's big day was supposed to be her moment to shine. After years of watching her cousins dominate every headline after being constantly overshadowed,
two snakes fighting, because Meghan Markle's past is truly coming back to bite her in the butt.
This was finally Eugenie's turn. St. George's Chapel, the works, a proper royal spectacle. And Fergie, despite all her past scandals, was absolutely beaming with pride. Her daughter was getting married, and for once, the spotlight was going to be on them. And then Meghan made an announcement. Just days after Eugenie's wedding, word started spreading that Meghan was pregnant. Now here's where it gets messy. There's this unwritten rule in tight-knit families that you don't steal thunder from another family member's milestone moment. You wait, you give them their time. But Meghan and Harry chose to share their baby news during the same weekend as Eugenie's wedding festivities. Some people say it was innocent timing. Others saw it as a power move. Fergie saw it as disrespect, pure and simple. Sources close to her say she was livid but couldn't say anything publicly at the time. She was already on thin ice, still rebuilding her reputation after decades of being the black sheep speaking out would have made her look petty, jealous. So she smiled through it, congratulated the happy couple, and swallowed her anger. But Fergie's not someone who forgets. She's spent years being humiliated, criticized, torn apart by the media and the family itself. And watching Meghan, this newcomer who'd barely been in the family for a few months, overshadow her daughter's wedding, that stuck with her. That festered. Fast forward to 2025. Meghan's no longer in the royal fold. She's in California building her brand, doing her Netflix deals, living her best life away from all the drama she claims she wanted to escape. Meanwhile, Fergie's been on her own redemption arc. She's written books, done interviews, slowly clawed her way back into respectability. And somewhere along the way, she realized something. She doesn't owe Meghan anything. Not loyalty, not silence, certainly not protection. So when that interviewer brought up Meghan's influence, Fergie saw an opening, a chance to finally say what she'd been holding back for years. Not directly, because Fergie's too smart for that, but cryptically enough that everyone would understand. It was payback wrapped in a smile, revenge served cold with plausible deniability. And here's the genius.
That lady is a temptress. She's a siren. She's lured him into the rocks.
I haven't heard that term in a long time.
Fergie didn't attack Meghan's character or her marriage. She went after the one thing Meghan spent years trying to rewrite. Her past. The yacht summers, the networking, the climb up the social ladder. All things that are normal in Hollywood but don't exactly scream fairy tale romance. Fergie knew that bringing up that chapter would hit where it hurts most. But there's something else at play too. Fergie understands the long game better than almost anyone. She's been playing it for decades, surviving scandal after scandal, rebuilding bit by bit. She knows that in the royal world, you don't get mad, you get even. And you do it in a way that looks innocent on the surface, but lands like a bomb underneath. So was this about Eugenie's wedding? Partially. Was it about years of watching Meghan position herself as the victim while Fergie stayed quiet? Probably. Was it about reminding everyone that she's still here, still relevant, still capable of making headlines? Absolutely. Because Fergie didn't just want to hurt Meghan. She wanted to reclaim some of the spotlight. And the timing couldn't have been better. Meghan's been relatively quiet lately, no major projects dropping, no huge interviews making waves. She's in that vulnerable space where the narrative could shift either way. And Fergie, who's built a career on knowing exactly when to strike, saw that opening and took it. The message was clear. You come for Fergie's daughter, even indirectly, even years later, and Fergie will remember. She'll wait for the perfect moment, and then she'll strike in a way that leaves just enough ambiguity that she can smile and shrug it off while the internet does the rest. That's not bitterness, that's strategy. And Meghan just got reminded that some grudges don't expire. They just wait for the right moment to resurface. The second Fergie dropped that yacht comment, the internet went absolutely feral. People who hadn't thought about Meghan's pre-royal days in years became obsessed researchers, scrolling through decade-old blogs, combing archived Instagram posts, pulling up photos from forgotten corners of the internet. Within hours, Twitter threads appeared with screenshots of old social media posts, grainy photos from yacht parties in Monaco and Greece, guest lists from exclusive events. One viral thread traced Meghan's social circle from her early acting days, connecting dots between yacht appearances, industry connections, and relationships that led her into elite circles. These weren't random beach vacation photos. People noticed patterns, the same exclusive events across multiple years, the same circles of wealthy individuals. And Meghan wasn't just attending, she was strategically positioned, always impeccably dressed, always networking, always in frame with people who could advance her career. TikTok exploded with reaction videos. Young creators who grew up watching Suits suddenly learned about this whole other chapter. Comment sections turned into wild debates.
There was like photos with her and Prince Andrew way back in the day when she was like in her early 20s. Wow.
Some defended her. That's literally how Hollywood works. Others felt the Cinderella story they'd been sold was way more calculated than they'd realized. Old blog posts from the early 2000s resurfaced. Fashion bloggers and society writers had documented these yacht parties extensively. Nobody had connected those dots to Meghan until now. One 2006 blog post described a Greek yacht party, mentioning several Hollywood hopefuls, including one actress absolutely working the room. People cross-referenced the timeline and location and came to their own conclusions. Instagram accounts dedicated to royal gossip had a field day. Side-by-side comparisons appeared. Meghan at yacht parties versus royal events. The captions were brutal. From yacht girl to duchess, the glow-up is real. Comments were divided, half impressed by her strategic networking, half feeling deceived. YouTube channels went into overdrive. Titles like What Fergie Really Meant About Meghan's Past racked up hundreds of thousands of views. Commentary channels dissected every word, analyzed body language, speculated about what Fergie knew versus what she'd say on camera. This internet frenzy felt different from typical celebrity gossip. It felt like a collective realization. The carefully curated image of Meghan as a relatively unknown actress who happened to meet a prince was being challenged by years of strategic positioning and networking. Not unusual for Hollywood, but definitely at odds with the fairy tale narrative. The phrase yacht girl started trending. Meghan's supporters pushed back, arguing it was misogynistic code language designed to shame women for networking in male-dominated industries. The counter-argument was that it wasn't about networking itself, it was about the gap between the image Meghan presented versus the reality of how she built her connections. Through all of this, Fergie stayed quiet. She didn't need to add fuel because the internet was doing it for her. That one cryptic comment had unleashed a digital deep dive that Meghan's PR team was completely unprepared to handle. Because how do you fight thousands of people independently coming to their own conclusions? You can't. All you can do is watch as your carefully constructed narrative crumbles. Weeks after Fergie's bombshell, the dust still hasn't settled. The stories morphed from a single interview moment into a full-blown reassessment of everything people thought they knew. And the real damage isn't coming from what Fergie said. It's coming from what people are discovering on their own. Meghan's brand was built on authenticity. The woman who spoke her truth, who chose freedom over pretense. That narrative worked because people believed she was genuine, that her story was organic. But now that foundation's cracking. What the internet's digging up isn't showing Meghan did anything wrong, but it suggests she's always been more calculating than she let on. The yacht parties, the strategic networking, the careful positioning.
There's a war room.
I think I
The
tuned out.
royals.
The Royal War Room.
have got they're about to go to war.
None of that's scandalous by Hollywood standards. But it does contradict the image of someone who just stumbled into opportunity. That changes everything about how her story gets told going forward. The fairy tale romance. Now people question whether meeting Harry was really chance or the result of years positioning herself in circles, where she'd eventually cross paths with someone like him. Her complaints about the media, now reframed as someone who knew exactly what she was getting into but didn't like it when things got hard. The commercial impact is already showing. Brands circling Meghan for partnerships are getting cold feet. Not because they think she did anything wrong, but because controversy is controversy. Her upcoming projects, Netflix deals, podcast plans, all under scrutiny in a way they weren't before. Her supporters are fighting back hard, accusing the internet of misogyny, of tearing down a successful woman for doing exactly what men do without criticism. And there's truth there. But the counterpoint keeps coming back to authenticity. If Meghan had owned that hustle from the start, this wouldn't hit as hard. She sold a different story, and now people feel like they bought something that wasn't quite as advertised. Meanwhile, Fergie's sitting back watching it unfold, and she's winning. She didn't have to make detailed statements or show receipts. All she had to do was plant a seed and let human curiosity do the rest. She's reminded everyone that she survived decades of scandals and media destruction. She knows how this game works. The genius of Fergie's move is that there's no clean way for Meghan to respond. If she ignores it, speculation continues. If she addresses it directly, she gives the story more oxygen. If she tries to reframe it as sexist attacks, she risks looking like she's deflecting. It's a PR nightmare with no obvious exit. The royal family is staying completely silent. They're not defending Meghan, but they're also not piling on. They don't need to. Fergie did the dirty work for them, and now they can watch as Meghan's post-royal narrative gets picked apart by public opinion. Regardless of where people land, one thing's undeniable. Fergie changed the conversation. She shifted the narrative from Meghan as victim to Meghan as strategist, from persecuted outsider to calculated climber. And whether that's fair or not, it's the story that's sticking right now. Once the internet makes its decision, it's nearly impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. You know what's absolutely brilliant about what Fergie's done since that initial comment? She's gone completely radio silent. No follow-up interviews, no clarifications, no walking anything back. Just pure, calculated silence. And that silence is doing more damage than 1,000 explicit statements ever could. Because when you leave that much room for interpretation, people fill in the blanks themselves. And what they imagine is often way worse than what actually happened. Think about it. If Fergie had come out with specific details, named names, produced actual receipts.
The royal family is about to be hit with one of their biggest scandals and the biggest.
Meghan's team would have something concrete to fight against. They could fact check, they could challenge timelines, they could bring in their own sources to counter the narrative. But how do you fight vague insinuation? How do you respond to a knowing smile and a cryptic comment about fairy tales? You can't. All you can do is watch as the internet spins itself into a frenzy trying to decode what was meant. This is vintage Fergie strategy, something she learned the hard way through decades of her own scandals. When you're too explicit, you give people ammunition. When you're too defensive, you look guilty. But when you drop a bomb and then disappear, that's when the real chaos begins. Because everyone else starts doing the work for you, digging up old stories, connecting dots, building narratives that you never actually spelled out but also never denied. And Fergie knows something crucial. The modern media cycle thrives on mystery. Give people a complete story and they'll consume it and move on, but give them fragments, hints, suggestions of something bigger lurking beneath the surface. They'll obsess over it for months. They'll create podcasts dissecting every word. They'll build entire YouTube channels around speculation. They'll keep the story alive far longer than any single interview ever could. So the beauty of her approach is that she gets to maintain plausible deniability while still achieving maximum impact. If anyone calls her out, she can throw up her hands and say she was just reminiscing about old times, that she never mentioned Meghan specifically, that people are reading way too much into casual conversation. But everyone knows exactly what she meant. The wink wink, nudge nudge is so obvious that denying it would be insulting to everyone's intelligence. But it's also vague enough that there's nothing concrete to point to. And here's where Fergie's really playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. By staying silent, she's forcing Meghan to make the next move. Does Meghan address it? Does she ignore it? Does she try to shift the conversation? Every option has risks, and Fergie knows it. She's created a situation where there's no good response, only varying degrees of damage control. That's not luck. That's strategy from someone who's been through the media ringer more times than she can count. The silence also does something else. It lets Fergie's supporters and the general public do the dirty work without her having to get her hands messy. She doesn't need to elaborate on what she meant by yacht summers because 1,000 bloggers and gossip sites are doing it for her. She doesn't need to explain the timeline because people online are mapping it out in excruciating detail. She doesn't need to make direct statements because people are making them on her behalf. And she's not accountable for what random people on Twitter decide to believe. This is a psychological chess game at its finest. Fergie understands that in the age of social media, you don't need to control the narrative directly. You just need to plant the seed and let the algorithm do the rest. Every reaction video, every think piece, every heated debate in the comments section.
And Prince William making very clear that his sights are now set on Harry and Meghan and those titles
keeps her original comment alive and relevant. She set the fire and then stepped back to watch it burn, knowing that trying to put it out would only spread the flames further. What's really fascinating is how this strategy protects Fergie from any real consequences. If Meghan's team tries to push back, who are they pushing back against? Fergie's not making ongoing statements. She's not doing a media tour trashing Meghan. She made one comment weeks ago and then went quiet. Attacking her now would look desperate, like Meghan's bothered by something that shouldn't bother her if there's nothing to it. It's a trap, and Fergie knows Meghan sees it. The royal family has to be watching this with a mix of horror and admiration. Horror because Fergie's always been somewhat of a loose cannon, someone they've tried to keep at arm's length for decades. But admiration because she just did what they would never do themselves. She went after Meghan in a way that's effective but untraceable back to them. They didn't have to lift a finger, didn't have to leak anything to the press, didn't have to risk their own carefully maintained image. Fergie did it for them, and now they get to benefit from the fallout without any of the blowback. And Fergie's redemption arc isn't even taking a hit from this. If anything, it's getting a boost. People are reevaluating her, seeing her not as the messy duchess who couldn't get it together, but as a survivor who learned to play the game better than anyone. She's being portrayed as someone who took her lumps, stayed quiet when she had to, and then struck back when the moment was right. That's not villainy in the public eye, that's vindication. The silence also serves another purpose. It keeps people guessing about what else Fergie might know. If she's willing to hint at yacht summers in a casual interview, what other stories is she sitting on? What else has she seen or heard over the years that she's chosen not to share yet? That uncertainty creates a cloud of potential exposure that hangs over Meghan indefinitely. It's not just about what Fergie said. It's about what she could say if she decided to stop being cryptic and start being explicit. This is the long game Fergie's been playing, and it's paying off in ways that a direct attack never could have.
Ms. Markle doesn't have friends. She doesn't do friends. She does business content.
She's not the aggressor in the public narrative. She's just someone who answered a question honestly and let people draw their own conclusions. She's not obsessed with Meghan. She's moved on with her life and only speaks about the past when asked. She's not bitter. She's just someone who remembers things differently than the fairy tale version we've been sold. Every element of her positioning is calculated to maximize damage while minimizing her own exposure. And the wildest part, she can keep this going indefinitely just by staying silent. Every time Meghan does something public, launches a new project, gives an interview, people will remember Fergie's comment and view it through that lens. The yacht summer reference becomes a permanent asterisk on Meghan's story. A nagging question that never fully goes away. That's not just winning one round, that's changing the entire game. Fergie's masterclass here is in understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Let one bomb drop, then step back and watch everyone else do the talking. It's ruthless, it's effective, and it's exactly the kind of move you'd expect from someone who survived being the most hated woman in Britain and somehow came out the other side still standing. So where does all this leave us? Well, Fergie just reminded everyone of something we tend to forget in the age of carefully curated Instagram feeds and strategic PR campaigns. The internet never forgets, and neither do the people who've been watching from the sidelines for years. One cryptic comment about Yacht summers delivered with that signature Fergie smile, and suddenly the entire narrative around Meghan Markle is being rewritten in real time. The genius of what just happened isn't in what Fergie said, it's in what she didn't say. She left just enough room for interpretation that the internet went into full research mode, digging up old photos, resurfacing forgotten blog posts, connecting dots that had been sitting there all along waiting for someone to notice them. And now Meghan's stuck in this impossible position where addressing it gives the story more oxygen, but ignoring it lets the speculation harden into accepted truth. What we're watching is basically a masterclass in long game revenge. Fergie didn't need receipts or detailed statements or a tell-all interview. All she needed was perfect timing, a well-placed comment, and the patience to let human curiosity do the rest. She planted one seed and watched it grow into an entire forest of speculation.
Smile on your fucking face, man, because we're happier than ever, even though what happened to your uncle is about to happen to us. William's going to make...
And she did it all while maintaining just enough plausible deniability that nobody can really call her out without looking paranoid. And here's the thing that makes this whole situation so wild. This probably isn't even close to being over. Fergie's shown that she's willing to talk, that she's got stories to tell, and that she's not particularly concerned about protecting Meghan's carefully constructed image. Every time Meghan launches a new project or tries to control her narrative, there's now this lingering question in the background. What else does Fergie know? What else might she decide to casually mention in her next interview? The Yacht summer comment wasn't just about the past. It was a power move for the future. Fergie just established herself as someone who can shift the conversation around Meghan whenever she wants, with minimal effort and maximum impact. That's not bitterness, that's strategy. That's someone who learned from decades of her own scandals exactly how to make one comment do the work of 1,000 pointed remarks. For Meghan, this is the kind of problem that doesn't have an easy solution. Her brand was built on authenticity, on being the woman who spoke her truth and refused to play by outdated rules. But now people are questioning whether that authenticity was real or just another strategic move in a lifetime of strategic moves. And once that doubt creeps in, it's incredibly hard to shake. The fairy tale gets a lot less magical when people start seeing the calculations behind it. So what happens next? Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. Maybe Meghan goes on the offensive with a major interview or documentary that addresses all of this head on. Maybe she tries to ride it out and hope the internet moves on to the next scandal. Maybe Fergie decides she's got more to say and drops another bomb when we least expect it. But one thing's for sure, the dynamic just shifted in a major way, and the Duchess, who thought she'd escaped the royal drama, just got a brutal reminder that some people have very long memories and even longer patience. The real lesson here? Never underestimate someone who's survived their own scandals and came out the other side still standing. Because those are the people who know exactly where the weak spots are, exactly when to strike, and exactly how much damage one well-timed comment can do. Fergie just taught everyone watching a masterclass in strategic moves, and Meghan's the one left dealing with the fallout. Anyway, that's the tea on this absolute mess of a situation. What do you think is going to happen next? Do you think Meghan can recover from this? Or did Fergie just permanently change how people see her story? And honestly, was this payback justified? Or did Fergie cross a line? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to know where you stand on this royal showdown. And if you made it this far, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because something tells me this drama's far from over. Trust me. You're going to want to be here when the next chapter drops. I'll catch you in the next one.